this is Pete, welcome to my channel. And here we are with the Akai MPC ONE and my reasons for switching to this amazing groove box. It really took me some time to make the final step, but after a series of really striking firmware updates, I could not resist the charm of this box anymore. So let me show you why the MPC ONE actually is the new centerpiece of my little desktop studio. The MPC sound engine is the most flexible one that I have seen so far in a hardware groove box. Besides the central sampling instruments, there are several plug-in synths which are a bit more CPU hungry, but they make up a great variety of good sounding instruments. Of course, the overall CPU power is limited, but Akai leaves it to the user how to distribute the capacity among different instruments. There are 8 audio tracks for recording of external sources, but there is no fixed number of parallel instrument tracks. You are completely free to adapt the settings to your own song requirements. For me, the important question at the beginning was, is it really possible to cope with such flexibility within a hardware device? The answer is yes, because in my opinion, the MPC has a really well-designed user interface. It is not perfect, but if you take into account the complexity of the device, it is amazing how accessible the huge amount of functionality actually is. There is some learning curve, and at the beginning it is absolutely necessary to understand the basic structure of an MPC project in terms of sequences, tracks and programs. But in my case, it was a matter of days to learn the basic functionality in order to feel well with the machine. In case of the electron sequencer of model samples and cycles, it took me much longer to learn the basic workflow. And I must admit that I still do not feel very well with that sequencer today. There are mainly 2 reasons for the good accessibility of the MPC functionality. First, there is no deep menu structure. It's almost always a relatively short path to reach a particular function. Secondly, there are almost always alternative ways to perform a particular function. You can mainly use the big touch screen, or you can mainly use the buttons in combination with the data wheel and the Q-Link encoders. And it's also possible to flexibly combine all user interface elements to find your personal best way. Well, that's all fine for using the MPC, but how does the device become a studio centerpiece? Another unique feature of the MPC hardware is the great connectivity. Besides the usual DIN MIDI ports and the USB device port, there's also a USB host port. This can be used to connect USB MIDI and audio devices directly to the MPC. For example, I can plug in my QNexus keyboard, my MIDI Fighter Twister, or my class-compliant MIDI interfaces. And it's even possible to connect my Behringer digital mixer with 18 audio inputs and outputs, which can then be accessed in the MPC. There are also 4 control voltage sockets, which combine well with modular equipment. For me, an important feature is that I can use the audio inputs for my external synths, which I can then mix in the MPC with the internal sound generators and the effects. At that point, it becomes clear that the MPC actually offers almost all elements of a digital audio workstation. But I don't want to discuss the question whether an MPC-based setup is doorless or not. For me, it's clear that it is something different than my laptop with Ableton Live, some VST plugins and a hardware audio MIDI interface. I really like the complete MPC solution as a whole, which is more than just a sum of its components. You don't have to struggle with nasty operating systems, with device drivers and latency issues, and finally with components that do not work together in a sufficient way. Beginners should also take into account the time and money it takes to set up a working DAW solution. I can imagine to export my MPC projects to Ableton in order to use additional plugins and in rare cases a few more audio tracks. But at the moment my prediction is that this will not happen very often. Finally, I have prepared a little demo track that should at least highlight some of the features that I mentioned. I hope you will enjoy my first MPC jam, and I can promise you there will be more in the next future. So please don't forget to subscribe, stay healthy and stay tuned.